Right, back live with you tonight, and thanks for staying on. Let's start here now. The Life Esidimeni inquest has found that former Gauteng Health MEC Qedani Mahlangu and Mental Health Director Dr Makgabo Manamela were negligent in the execution of their duties. The High Court in Pretoria has been looking into the deaths of 144 psychiatric patients who were removed to ill-equipped and unregistered non-governmental organizations as part of cost-cutting measures. Newzroom Afrika's Veronica Makhoali reports.
Were it not for the decisions of former Health MEC Qedani Mahlangu and Director of Mental Health Makgabo Manamela, hundreds of mental health patients would still be alive. These are the findings of a legal inquest set up to decide whether there is enough evidence to prosecute health department officials and workers of non-governmental organizations.
I have come to the conclusion that the deaths of the following deceased, namely Matlakala Mutsohai, Virginia Makapela, Terence Chava, Laiki Maseko, Josiah Daniels, Franz Decker, Charity Ratsotso, Deborah Peta, and Kokeso Moharani were negligently caused by the conduct of Ms. Dorothy Qedani Mahlangu and Ms. Dr. Makgabo Manamela. Ms. Mahlangu proceeded to terminate the contract between the Life Esidimeni Care Center and the Gauteng Department of Health, despite numerous expert advice and warnings from the professionals.
Mahlangu and Manamela were among key decision makers almost a decade ago when the Life Esidimeni contract was terminated. At the time, they cited the need to deinstitutionalize mental health and save costs as the drivers for the termination plan. What transpired was a poorly planned, hastily executed tragedy that led to 144 people dying at the hands of a system that was supposed to care for them.
She could have saved the many lives as she visited the NGOs and could see that they were not adequately equipped and some of the personnel were not adequately qualified to care for the mental health care users.
One of these patients is Virginia Makapela, the sister of Christine Ngumalo, who died in August 2016. Makapela was moved without the knowledge of her family and died in the process. Ngumalo was one of the first family members who spoke out publicly and demanded an investigation.
It's been 8 years. We never thought we'd get to this point. I can't tell you how it feels. I was fine up until this morning, and I just woke up emotional and tense and crying and couldn't believe that we actually made it this far. So it's been traumatic, to say the least. Over the years, we've been hearing people talk about closure. I struggle with the word closure because we've been fighting this for over 8 years. Our lives have changed so dramatically since the beginning of this process. We are different people than what we were back then.
According to patient records read out by the judge, Mahlangu and Manamela were found complicit in the deaths of patients who died from starvation, malnutrition, and pneumonia. Many of these patients' bodies were not sent for autopsy.
Today's ruling gives us that evidence, and it makes it possible for the National Prosecuting Authority to criminally prosecute her and her head of mental health at the time in the Gauteng Health Department. And I think that is crucial for justice. It, of course, doesn't mean that the NPA would necessarily do it. They can decide, but there would certainly be a lot of pressure on them to do so, because in 2019, they said they didn't have enough evidence to open cases, and that is part of why this inquest was opened.
From the scathing Ombuds report to the historic arbitration, and finally the landmark inquiry, civil society organizations like Section 27 and the South African Depression and Anxiety Group say the fight for justice is far from over.
The sad reality is that those lives are lost and that they could have been prevented. And I think it's a very hard pill to swallow, but I think for the families, after connecting with them, they're so relieved. They finally have some answers, some tangible answers and information, which I think really helps with that closure.
Mahlangu has declined to comment on the ruling, but informed Newzroom Afrika that she is seeking legal advice. For Newzroom Afrika on Channel 405, I'm Veronica Makhoali in Johannesburg.